In partnership with Ecovacs, we're comparing the Deebot X2 Omni against the Deebot T20 Omni. Now, these are both high-end robots with a ton of features and a big price tag to match, but one of them is clearly better. And spoiler alert, it's the X2 Omni. But why is it better? Well, I've done a ton of testing, so let's get into it. Both the X2 and the T20 are mopping robot vacuums. They've got dual rotating pads, which apply pressure to the floor when they're mopping. They both empty dirty water from mopping into a container in the base station. And they both have hot water mopping, which heats the water to 131 degrees Fahrenheit or 55 degrees Celsius. Compared to using cold water, it removes stains better from the mopping pads. Both of these robots have an obstacle avoidance system, and they both use the same app, but there are some differences, which I'll get into later. Now, they're both very good robot vacuums overall, and you can find them at pretty big discounts at this time of year. Now, if you use my links down below, I will get a commission. But as usual, Ecovacs hasn't paid me, nor have they told me what to say. All my opinions and all of my testing are completely independent. Now, one of the first things you're going to notice is that it's finally hip to be square again. Now, if you're an X2, that means you're going to get into corners just a little bit better. The square shape means the brush can extend right into the corners a little bit better than the T20. And it's also very good at edge cleaning. Now, the T20 is actually pretty good at edge cleaning too, and it does have brushes on both sides, whereas the X2 just has a brush on one side. Now, theoretically, that means it could clean your room a little bit faster, but in practice, I don't think that really matters. They both have a rubber brush roll in the center of the vacuum. The roller on the X2 is significantly bigger than it is on the T20. Also, the wheels are wider apart. That means you can just get more dirt in here. The X2 has definitely got an advantage here. Now, in terms of mopping, one of the biggest differences between the X2 and the T20 is that the X2 has an onboard water tank. The T20 wets the mops at the dock, and when it goes out mopping, when it dries up, it has to return to the dock and re-wet the pads. So in practice, the X2 can actually use more water, it can get your floor a little bit wetter, and it can go out and mop a larger surface without having to return to the dock quite as much. So if you've got a larger house, larger floors, it's going to be just a little bit faster. But with robot vacuums, I don't think speed is too much of a consideration because you're not doing the work. Now, both of these robots have a fairly large base station, and personally, I don't think any robot vacuum base station looks that good, but the X2 is a little bit smaller, so if you're into something that's just a little bit sleeker and more compact, I'm going to give it to the X2. They both auto-fill with water after their mopping session, and they both auto-empty the water, and they both also auto-empty the dirt that you have into a bag, and you got to replace that bag about every 60 days or so, so I'm going to call that kind of a tie. Now, for the cat test, my cats found both vacuums kind of equally interesting, I guess you could say. They're fascinated by both of them, so I'm gonna give this one a tie too. Both these vacuums have really good suction for a robot. Now, the T20 has 6,000 pascals of suction, but the X2 has 8,000 pascals. That means it's about a third stronger. And that actually makes a pretty noticeable difference when it comes to our pickup tests. To evaluate pickup, we dumped 20 grams of sand on carpet, and then we sent out each robot to see how much it could collect with the robot set to maximum suction. So we found the T20 picked up 70% of the sand on carpet, but the X2 picked up 85%. And that's a really high number. In fact, the highest for any robot vacuum we tested so far. And then we did the same test on hardwood. And while the T20 picked up 90%, the X2 picked up 100% of the sand. That is the highest score I've ever given to any robot vacuum for pickup, and it is actually equivalent to a cordless vacuum on hardwood. Pretty impressive. Both vacuums actually do a very good job with pet hair. And if you have pets, you know it can kind of settle everywhere. So having a robot vacuum, I find, is really helpful in kind of keeping the dust, dirt, dander, and pet hair inside your vacuum and inside that bag instead of all around your room. Isn't that right? So both of these vacuums use rotating brushes, and in my opinion, it's actually more effective than the vibrating mop pad style because they're rotating and it's just better at getting out things like coffee stains that might be sitting for a couple days. And then when the sensors detect carpet, the X2 can raise the pads 15 millimeters versus 9 millimeters for the T20. Now on medium pile carpet, like you see in my testing, both of them raise the pads sufficiently. But if you have carpet that's just a little bit higher, the X2 is going to do a little bit better job and keep the water off of your carpet. Now, if you got shag carpet, you probably want to consider doing that first before sending out the robot to do a mopping run. Pro tip. So let's talk about navigation and obstacle avoidance. The T20 has a LiDAR-based system that sits on top of the robot. And LiDAR is essentially the same as radar, but using lasers.
A laser.
Instead of radio waves. And overall, it's pretty good at obstacle avoidance, but the X2 is actually significantly better. This is one of the big differences. The X2 has a LiDAR system and a camera system that both work together. And they're both integrated into the front bumper and lower down than the T20. And so that means it is an overall much better system at avoiding obstacles that are close to the floor. And the X2 can recognize up to 45 different obstacles. Now, I found pretty much every vacuum has a really tough time with cords. So I put a cord along the baseboard and I set both robots to work. Now, the X2 successfully avoided the cord where I left it along the baseboard, but the T20, it kind of stumbled over it like most vacuums do. Now, the X2 also recognized the fuzzy cat toy that I left, where the T20 just kind of ran it over. Kind of looks like a little Tribble from Star Trek. Now, fortunately, they both avoided the fake poop that I left on the floor, but when you run the test multiple times, I found the X2 was really consistent in avoiding it, where the T20 sometimes didn't see it quite as well, depending on the size of it. So if you've got really young pets and they tend to have accidents, this is definitely a consideration, and the X2 is going to be better in that circumstance. And they both recognize pets, so they're not going to run into your pets. But if you want to spy on your pets when you're not home, the X2 has a built-in camera system. And so you can use the robot and actually navigate with your phone and go up and see what they're doing. My cats were quite interested in it. And you can talk to them and have a two-way dialogue with your pets. If that is something that you think is a real thing, but it's kind of cool.
Voice call ended.
Now, because the T20 has a LiDAR system on top, it is just a little bit taller than the X2. It's about 4.1 inches tall, whereas the X2 is about 3.74 inches tall, so it can get under furniture that is just a little bit lower. When it comes to controlling the robots, they both use the Ecovacs app, which works over Wi-Fi. And personally, when setting up both these robots, I found the T20 to be a little bit cumbersome, but the X2 connected and I had it set up in just a couple of minutes. We use the same app to control both the robots. You can have 2D or 3D mode. You can create custom cleaning scenarios, create a schedule, and have it auto boost suction when it detects a carpet, and you can turn on the AI obstacle avoidance. And see, it also shows furniture pretty clearly. And you can customize how you want it to mop. And you can use AI to set up the cleaning in your house. Now, the in-app experience for the X2 is definitely better. And when you set it up, it's going to ask you if you have pets. And so if you say yes, it allows you to customize it for pet hair pickup. You can have it avoid pet litter or go and pick up pet litter around the litter box. And you can have it avoid places like cat beds, doggy beds, and feeding areas, or you can have it go there. One thing that both of these do is they can recognize where in your house it gets dirty, and they can create a custom cleaning pattern so that, let's say by the front door, you have people that come in and they have dirt around the front door. It'll go there more often and clean up that area. So the X2 is pretty much the top robot vacuum on the market right now. It is right up there. And if you have pets, I definitely recommend it. But you can find the T20 sometimes at a significantly better price. And it's also a very good robot vacuum as well. Now, the X2 is definitely better at mopping. It uses more water. It's just more effective overall. And if price is not really that much of an issue for you, absolutely go for the X2. If you're looking at high-end robot vacuums, I've got a video on the Roborock S7 Max Ultra. It's excellent. Click it right over here. Thanks for nerding out with us.